Not many people know of Namibia, or as a former ambassador of the United States to Namibia once called it, Nambia. There isn't much data to be found on the southern African capital, Windhoek, which holds approximately 39% of Namibia's urban population. Then why is there so much information on Windhoek's water infrastructure? This is precisely where lies the answer to why Windhoek's water tastes funky. Familiar with long and severe droughts, the city of Windhoek, or COW, decided nearly 60 years ago that it couldn't rely on its main water sources to supply its residents with the water they needed. It thus became the first city in the world to convert raw sewage into drinkable water. But first, let's learn about Windhoek's unique situation. Namibia is a desert country, flanked only by perennial rivers on its southern and northern borders. Windhoek is situated in the middle of the arid desert, 750 kilometers away from the closest perennial river, Okavango, and 300 kilometers from the Atlantic Ocean. Before 1933, the only source of water that served the city was groundwater obtained from boreholes and springs. Over the next 20 years, several dams were built to meet the increased demand. One of these has a capacity of 2.4 million cubic meters. From 2012 until now, however, it served as a hiking destination and jogging path for Windhoek residents. Today, 4 sources provide water to the city, including boreholes and surface water that is obtained from dams. The other 2 sources are the old and new Goriangab water reclamation plants. The old plant began its work in 1968, but its water now only gets used for irrigation. And thanks to the new plant, 25% of the water that flows out of Windhoek's taps once flowed out of the city through sewage pipes. Namibia Water Company, or NamWater, a parastatal, provides the great majority of the city's water from the 3 dams near the city. However, these depend on annual rainfall and aren't guaranteed sources of water. In 1994, COW approved an integrated water demand management program that included legislation, education, policy matters, and technical and financial measures. The main policy issues that COW has been targeting with this program are water saving and the maximum reuse of wastewater. The best and most feasible option for reuse of wastewater is still around and very much in use. The new plant, built in 2002, receives its water from Gammon's Water Care Works, the largest sewage treatment plant in Windhoek, and gets surface water from the Goriangab Dam on the outskirts of the city. At the plant, the sludge, we'll call it, undergoes 2 nutrient removal and biological treatments. Water is sampled and analyzed every 4 hours throughout the process as a means of quality control. Through a complex system of purification techniques, which in total take just 1 day, the sewage to water product is completely disinfected but not sterilized, a process that would be dangerous to people's health. The final product is based on and must adhere to WHO guidelines, South Africa's RAND potable water quality criteria, and the Namibian guidelines for Group A water. The sewage to water therefore goes through several steps: pre-ozonation, flocculation, dissolved air flotation, rapid sand filtration, ozonation, granule activated carbon, biological activated carbon, membrane filtration, chlorine disinfection, and stabilization. And though one may think that the water tastes funky because it was once poop, that's not the entire story. Namibia doesn't have precise standards for the appropriate level of chlorine in water, so water is usually over or under chlorinated. The chlorine dispensers are replaced manually by the plant's workers. When replacement doesn't happen on time, workers tend to compensate by increasing the chlorine pumping levels. The taste might be strange, but residents shouldn't worry. There haven't been any outbreaks of waterborne diseases since the start of potable water reuse in Windhoek in 1968. The reclaimed water is blended with treated surface water and or groundwater to provide additional safety. In times of water scarcity and low water demand, which is their winter, our summer, up to 50% reclaimed water is fed into the main distribution system. 99.8% of Windhoek informal settlement residents receive or have access to potable water. However, NamWater last year said it needs 8 billion Namibian dollars or 610 million US dollars to continue meeting Namibians' water demand. No additional water infrastructure has been added during the last 15 years, during which Windhoek has seen its population increase from 250 to 340,000. The 4-year drought that Namibia recently experienced demonstrates the need for measures beyond waste reclamation plants for urban residents. By the time the water crisis was announced in December 2015, 2 of the 3 main dams providing water to Windhoek were completely dry. The other was at 15% capacity. In late June 2016, the president of Namibia declared a state of emergency because of the drought. Companies were issued to cut water usage by 30%, affecting many of the city's big and small businesses, including Coca-Cola and hundreds of car washes, of which only 22 are legal. Local artists started a Don't Wash Me Nam campaign to encourage the look of dirty and dusty cars by creating art on them, and to discourage people from washing their cars, an important social status symbol. Windhoek is the only city in southern Africa to have a water control officer to regulate water consumption on private property. The officers are in charge of overseeing the use of water during high evaporation times, as well as the coverage of pools and water-efficient equipment such as taps with special regulations. Other cities and countries around the world have consulted Windhoek to examine and learn from its innovative and sometimes controversial method of water reclamation. Experts from developed countries such as the US, Australia, and Singapore have visited the reclamation plant to better understand how to cope with water shortages and how it can be adapted to their environments. Orange County in California employs a system of indirect potable water reuse, where the reclamation plant distributes the water into the ground rather than directly to faucets to let the soil naturally do its job. Although many cities around the world now recycle their water indirectly, it's the yuck factor of the idea of drinking recycled sewage that seems to be preventing most direct potable reuse projects from taking off. Not only is the water clean enough to drink as soon as it leaves the plant and of better quality than existing drinking water, but it costs less to produce than other water reuse systems. Take Carlsbad, California, for example, which constructed the largest desalination plant in the Western Hemisphere to serve San Diego starting in 2015. It converts 300 million gallons of seawater into 50 million gallons of drinking water per day, but at a cost of between $800 and $2,000 per acre foot. Water reclamation plants cost approximately $525 per acre foot and use less energy. The UN has predicted that most of the world's future cities will experience extreme water shortages by 2030. With the growth in urban populations, we need to find and use more sustainable methods to recycle water. Although people are currently uncomfortable with the thought of drinking previously contaminated water, direct water reclamation is a safe and reliable way to reduce our dependence on sources that may not be there 15 years from now.